I think I went into pediatrics because I found children way more entertaining than adults. I loved babysitting when I was an adolescent. And in med school, the diseases that children got were more straightforward and curable than adult diseases. And I like the challenge of talking with the parents. I think that's one reason why some people avoid pediatrics. But I found that to be a very good challenge. The way I ended up becoming editor in chief, I guess because I've had a very eclectic research career. I've done research on all different aspects of pediatric ID. I got asked to peer review many manuscripts and got lots of editorial experience from doing that. And then the chair of my departmentary class and asked me to be an associate editor for Evidence-Based Child Health, another journal. I was briefly the co-editor-in-chief of that journal, and then it actually folded because the publisher decided not to pay for it anymore. That kind of happened overnight. During that time, I had been asked to be the editor for the Evidence for Clinicians column in Pediatrics and Child Health. And then when Noni McDonald stepped down as editor-in-chief, decided I might have a chance to be editor-in-chief. So I applied and got that job more than 10 years ago now. I mentioned my eclectic research career. I think if you wish to have an academic career, you should choose a primary research focus, which I never really did, and try and become an expert in at least one area. Totally fine to do research on other topics, but I think it's good to have one area where people recognize you as an expert in that field, and I wish that I had done that. So we aim to publish articles with practical implications for pediatricians. So general pediatricians, but also the pediatric specialties that don't have an adult equivalent. So neonatology, adolescent medicine, developmental pediatrics. We aim to publish papers where people from those fields will look at that title and realize that it's something that they would like to read about. It's because I don't think they're what our readers are going to be interested in. So a common example would be a paper that relates to a subspecialty. So for example, a topic that only a pediatric endocrinologist would really be likely to want to read about versus a general pediatrician. Also, I think we get lots of surveys, and I think the problem with surveys, manuscripts that describe surveys fairly commonly. There's so many methodologic flaws with papers that describe surveys. You know, everything from was the survey validated to who answered the survey to did those who answered the survey actually say what they would really do what they would do in the real world. We also sometimes get descriptions of QI projects, and I think that a QI project is really only publishable if you collected a large amount of data that's not described elsewhere in the literature, or if you came up with a truly novel solution to a problem that people at other sites will have, and your solution would easily be transposable to another setting. Those are situations where it might be worth publishing. But I think fairly commonly people complete a project, present grand rounds, and someone says, well, you should publish that. And the question always is, is it really of value to other people? One paper I'd recommend reading that was published in PCH last year. I mean, there are many good papers, but one that really stood out to me was one that Charlotte Moore Hepburn was the first author on, recognizing adverse drug events related to pediatric medication compounding. I think that fairly commonly pediatricians won't lie about the fact that if they order a medication and it has to be compounded, there might be errors in the way that medication is compounded. So if a child is having unexplained signs or symptoms, think about whether there's any possibility that there's a problem with the medication. So it is 2,500 words, which I think some authors find difficult to meet, but I firmly believe that people are way more likely to read a shorter, concise article, and that if authors have a lot to say, you can fit things into tables or figures or boxes and still leave the reader with only 2,500 words in the main body of the manuscript.